can you make any comment for us at all on this notion, this idea we have about what the ego is and maybe where it's located in the brain and what your research might or might not have to say about the concept?
I can, but I'm not sure that you're going to like my answer.
Neuroscience, quantum physics, biology, plant medicine, non-dual tantric meditative practices. We will be exploring these concepts with experts to provide insight. Get ready to melt reality with us.
Uri Hasson is a professor in the Department of Psychology and the Neuroscience Institute at Princeton University. He obtained his bachelor's and his master's at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and then completed his doctoral degree in the neurobiology department at the Weizmann Institute of Science in Israel. Uri then came to the United States to do his postdoctoral training at NYU. Uri joined the faculty in neuroscience at Princeton University, where his laboratory studies brain responses to natural and real-life events. Specifically, Uri is interested in understanding how communication through storytelling affects human cognition. Welcome, Uri. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So the great Israeli historian Yuval Noah Harari has said that our greatest power as human beings, the thing that sets us apart from the rest of the animal kingdom, is our ability to tell stories. As a scientist, you appear to be interested in how the brain processes the information embedded in our storytelling, how our brains transmit and receive narrative stories. Do I have that right? Is that essentially your broad area of interest?
Yeah, I think you can expand it to communication. Storytelling is a communication tool. It's one of the most effective. There are other forms of communication. But yeah, broadly, we really care how people communicate, share their ideas, come to common ground, disagree, behave with language, and storytelling is a strong tool in that.
And essentially how the brain works to do all these things.
Yeah.
All right, so let's start by recapping the work you did back in your TED Talk, which I'll mention, has about 3.5 million views at this point. It's a very good TED Talk, and we'll have that in our show notes, and anybody should take a look at that because it's a great introduction to Uri's work. And in this talk, you attempt to boil down many years of research to about 14 minutes and to make it understandable to a non-scientific audience. You start by describing a technical concept known as neural entrainment. So can you bring us up to speed on the elegant experiments you designed that you described in that talk and how the brains of multiple listeners respond to storytellers?
So think about this magical thing that's happening now for the audience and us when they listen to their podcast. I have some, never met the audience, never will, probably, most of them. I have a very accent, so it's difficult to understand what I'm saying. I have a different background. I grew up in a different country, right? And yet, if you really pay attention, there is a magic going on now. I have some ideas in my mind that I'm translating into vocal sounds, vibration of air. This sound go to your recording system, and later it's going to be broadcast to the listeners and evoke different brain patterns in their listener, right? So basically, it's going from my brainwave to sound to the listener brainwaves. And this process allows to communicate and share ideas and tell stories and memories and say how we think and feel. It looks like a magic, right? And what we found is that what I'm doing by speaking is in a way trying to make your brain similar to mine. So I have brain patterns that related to what I'm thinking, and hopefully similar brain patterns will emerge in the listener while they listen. And if now the audience is completely confused, don't understand anything that I'm saying, the one thing I can assure the audience your brains is very different in activity than what's happening in my brain now. But if you start to get me and start to click with me, what we see is that your brain suddenly become more and more similar in its activity pattern to my brain. And the more similar we are, the more we click and the more we understand each other.
So my question is, when you're doing this research, I guess I'm stuck on the notion of if two people are in a disagreement and they connect into an area, something that they can agree upon, does the brain then connect into a congruency with that thing that they do agree upon? What happens then to the brain when they still have this whole area of information that they don't agree upon?
It's a wonderful question. And in a way, we're living in a moment in our society that it's so polarized that the feeling is that the other side do not listen to you, right? And have a very different perspective. So first, we need to realize that there's a continuum. It's not black and white.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, when it's a continuum and not black and white, we can be similar on some dimensions and be different on other dimensions. So for example, I can say immigration is good for the economy. And someone else will say immigration is terrible for the community. First, we all agree what is immigration, right? So over there, if we agree on immigration, immigration is defined by someone that is moving from one country to another, right? From his homeland to a new country. This agreement about what is immigration going to make our brains similar, even if we are under dispute. If someone believes that immigration is something completely different, then you won't be aligned on that aspect as well. So even when you in disagreement with people, we use the same language, we're going to agree on most. So we'll see tight agreement across brains. Now, if I have further agreement, it will become more and more similar, right? But it doesn't start from 0 to 1. It's a continuum. And if you think about it, the basic of language is disagreement. And I think the problem that we have in this current moment, that we're even losing this basic agreement about the meaning of words. Let me give you an example. We think that words have a lexical definition. I will open the dictionary and I will see the definition of the word. For example, freedom. I'm saying the word freedom. You can open the dictionary. We all know English. We should be aligned on the meaning. But that's not the case. The meaning of words depends on how you use it. So for example, if someone uses immigration to talk about the Second Amendment and gun rights, whenever you say freedom, it thinks about gun and the Second Amendment. If someone uses freedom to talk about the civil rights movement, you have a different association to the word. Now, we can use the word freedom and even not be aware that it evokes completely different association, and then we're going to be even further apart. Now, it used to be, we're old enough to remember that there were only few TV channels. Everyone listened to the same news. Everyone read the same newspapers. So at least we agree on the facts. We always have disagreement about the interpretation to some extent. But now that each one have his own channel and his own feed, and when you plug a word in Google, you get different results than another person with another story. And someone feed is only Fox News, someone feed is only the New York Times and MSNBC. We lose the third common ground, because we use the word in such a different way that we become less and less similar across groups and more similar to people with similar field. So I think that's what we see currently around us.
Yeah, it's a risky time for this because there's so much divisiveness. But I saw in your TED talk that there's this incredible experiment you did with odometers, and they all started out in a different pace or ticking back and forth, and eventually, somehow, magically, they aligned up to the same pattern. And I think you described that eventually that's what happens in the brain. There's some kind of an alignment. And I wondered if you could talk about what is this neural entanglement and how can very divisive entities somehow align in this challenge during this challenging time.
So entrainment, that's the process you describe. Basically, it's a very simple physical process. I think our brain tends to be coupled to the outside. Like if I'm going out to club, all the audience now going to be aligned to each sound of the clapping. So all the brains going to tick together. I think this is what our brains want. Our brains want to be aligned to the outside. And I think once you're listening to only one side, you become aligned to one side perspective. But there is a lot of studies that show that it's enough to people from the other side of the aisle to meet and talk. They don't need to agree. Only by talking, they want to find a common ground. That, I think, is a tendency of the human brain. When you talk with someone, suddenly you smile. It's, oh my God, you smile, I'm smiling. You have kids, I have kids. We are more similar. It's not like we are from Mars and from Venus. We are really living in the same country. We have the same things. We have the same food. We have kids. We have education system. And it's bring them together. So I think there is a tendency of the human brain during communication and conversation to want to be coupled. Of course, nothing is simple. And in different contexts, when you are at war, you will never basically see the other side suffering. And we see it over and over, When you are at war, you're going to amplify any kid at your side that is dying, and you're going to be very not perceptive for the other side suffering. So humans have these two tendencies. But if you bring them into conversation and not into the fighting mode, naturally they will try to align. And that's what we want to do.
And so you would even bring these concepts into something as stark as, say, the October 7th massacres in Israel, where everybody knows that an event happened, and yet there's such a difference in the way the brains actually process that same exact information.
Yeah, and it's breaking my heart. When people say people on the 7th of October were killed, and they weren't killed. It was a massacre.
That's right.
They were basically really, that's like murder. You're killed by a car accident, right? Not someone coming and do horrible stuff that I want to mention. On the other hand, you can see it on the other side, like people in Gaza also are dying, right? The other side closes out because we will not defend ourselves. We cannot take this suffering into account. So that's what makes it complicated, right? That we tend to be like in-group, out-group, and we really care about our group, and we can block the other groups. And so let me give you an example. From basically, I got an email from the Dalai Lama, and the Dalai Lama was saying, I read your paper. I don't think you watched my TED Talk, okay? I read your paper. I'm doing a conference in Africa. I really want you to fly and meet with me because I'm really believing the Ubuntu philosophy. I am because we are. So please come to talk with me. I think that it's like related to your studies. Of course, the minute I said yes, okay, you said yes, but and at the end we did not meet because he got sick, so he can't sick. So that also there. But I was thinking about his sentence. I am because we are the Ubuntu statement, and it's not like beautiful statement, right? Because I think what the Dalai Lama was thinking, I am defined by other people. So the we define me, and I'm connected to other people. And it's a beautiful statement. But also, once you start to think, who is the we? Suddenly, the sentence has also a dark meaning. Because the we say we, not them, right? The we can be we, the women, we, the Americans, we, the Israelis, we, the Palestinians, we, the scientists, we, the gay, whatever we you want, you can plug there, and it really define who is your other. And the other doesn't define you by negation. So I think there are these like forces in us that it's like the yin and the yang, right? It can get you dark and bright at the same time. And people are not good with that. People say either black or white. When I'm saying it both, it's usually complicated for listeners.
So, I mean, this is a really incredible point and an incredible conversation from a social activist perspective, from a perspective of how do we live together with differences. And of course, from, I'm fascinated by the idea that, of course, cellularly, everything is interconnected, right? But the mind, intellect, and ego separates everything. That's its job. And how do we erase unconscious bias so that we see each other as actually variations off of the same, plumage, off of the same creation. And so that's a lot of our work, is to really explore this concept of, actually, how are we similar, instead of what that we means is actually all species, all humans, and all of nature is actually the ultimate we.
Yeah, that in a way, that I think this was exactly the Dalai Lama way of thinking when you say like I am because we, and we all connected, we all human beings, we all living in the same planet. So the we can be like John Lennon say, imagine all the people, right? So you want to imagine the we, but in reality, and we have to realize it, because there always the we include the they. It's the in group and out group is a very strong, I think it's the first human tendency. The like classical experiment, you give a group of kids in camp, green shirts and yellow shirts. Immediately they start to have the we and they. But they are the same camp, the same group. It immediately emerging. And this is human nature. And there are also good things about it, right? When you say we the scientists, science have some culture that, align, promote, it's fine to have we the scientists. It's not like, oh, I cannot say we unless it's inclusive. It's okay to be exclusive to some extent, as long as you remember that the other side is really we as well, right? So we need, it's the yin and yang. It's a dynamical thing that have a dialectic that we tend to forget the dialectic of stuff. We want things to be more simple, I think.
So let's turn Uri to another topic, the default mode network. And as I understand it, the default mode network is simply stated what our brain does while we're daydreaming or while we're not thinking of thinking. Well, first of all, is that right? And tell us a little bit about the role of the default mode network and how it's related to your work.
Actually, what we found is actually that during communication, when you're not daydreaming, when you're talking to people, the default mode is the most important place. So actually, it's really the opposite. It's the place that connects who you are with what's happening outside. So it's bringing really all the things that we talked about, of your memories and your belief and who you are, with you hear the word freedom from the outside, and how do you process it? So let me give you an example. I think scientific examples would make it like less abstract for people. We took a story from J.D. Salinger, and it's a short story. It's a smart, very witty story, and it has two interpretations. So the background is a husband lost track of his wife in a party in New York. He's a very anxious guy. He go back to his apartment alone, middle of the night, calling his best friend. I lost my wife. I don't know where she is. I'm so worried. What should I do? Can I come over to relax with you? I don't know what to do. And the best friend is a bit dismissive. I'm tired. Let me go back to sleep. It will be fine. Everything is fine. And next to him, there is like a naked woman. And Salinger, is very smart. He doesn't tell you anything about the identity of the woman. So the audience can think, oh, maybe this is the wife having an affair with the best friend. Or maybe this is the girlfriend, and this is very anxious, annoying friend that you try to get rid of and go back to sleep. So it's not clear, right? So what we did basically, as good scientists, we ruined the ambiguity. For half of the people were saying, before the story started, we say the wife had an affair, now she's with the best friend in bed. For the other, we say the wife is very loyal. This is a very anxious guy, really suspicious all the time. But really, his wife is very loyal and he's a bit jealous, okay? And this is it. And then everyone listening to the same story, same words, no different in the story, it's exact same input to the brain. But different people have different memories and beliefs, right? Because we gave them the memories. And this like one sentence of context before, one memory that we gave, make one group that believed that the wife had an affair to be more similar in the default mode network, and the other group become more similar among themselves, thinking that the husband is jealous. One word, not one word, like one sentence, was enough to make these two groups so different that I can look on the brain of one listener, and by 92% accuracy, I can tell you what he thinks, whether he thinks that the wife has an affair or whether he thinks that the husband is jealous. And that's happening in the default mode network. So what's happening in the default mode network, you take your belief that you heard, because, your lifetime, listening to all this media and people talking and your family members and your friends, and now you hear something and you process it in the light of what you also believe. And that's happening in the default mode network. So it's really the meeting point between who you are and what you experience.
So Uri, something just struck me about your research, and it's kind of interesting. I wonder what your reaction is to it. So I'm a regulatory consultant. I work with clients, with drug development clients, helping them get their products through FDA regulatory paradigms. And one of the most powerful tools that a drug developer can have is a biomarker, right? Rather than having to look at an endpoint, they can look at an actual biomarker. You are working on the greatest biomarker in the history of science, right? The brain's response. And I suppose, what do you think about this idea that someday we could launch drugs or treatments or some kind of products related to these brain findings that you're finding, as opposed to sort of the ultimate endpoints.
To be terrible.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, we have something in our amendment, basically, right? The freedom of speech, right? It's a beautiful thing, right? If I could read what you are thinking now with my tools, and we
Right.
might be able to do it actually, we're getting closer. Then also we need to protect your freedom to think, right? And we all know that sometimes we have weird things running in our mind, and it's fine, you have the freedom to hallucinate. I should not go to what you are dreaming about. I should not care. So I'm not sure that it will be good development if we will have this like biomarker and the tool to rethought. So hopefully.
Okay, so let me revise my question. It would be the worst biomarker in the history of humanity. How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. But I was focused on this idea that that's really what you're doing. You're trying to understand what's happening in the brain during this phenomenology that we all know. We all know about storytelling, but you're trying to understand what's happening in the brain during storytelling.
Yeah, I know. We're trying to understanding the human brain and mind intellectually. It's one of the most interesting things to study on Earth, right? We have like this like
Right.
mysterious. I don't know what's happening in my brain. I know what I'm saying now,
Right.
but I don't have access to all my neurons that, now firing in my brain. And to ask how this like brain give rise to thoughts and feeling and doing, it's a real mystery that we're tackling. But there is also the question is what's happening while you know it and can use it as a tool. For example, people are really good now about changing your mind to buy stuff that you don't need. So it's not that our brain is not controlled by others now. Politicians control our brain all the time with messaging that highly calibrated. And then you can see people that can have very weird thoughts because of things that are fed to them. Really.
Yeah.
We just talk about wars, right? It's weird. The election this year is weird. Everything, it's weird. And you say, oh, how can people think that something is weird? But then you say, if someone hears 1,000 times the election are rigged, and 1,000 times, it starts to believe because it was saying 1,000 times. It's not about the evidence, it's about the amount of time people tell you stuff, right? It's statistics. And if this is the case, we are vulnerable. And there's two ways, again, to think about it. Understanding how the brain working can make our brain more resilient, or help people to develop more strong tools to manipulate us. And you never know, it probably will go both ways, right? Yeah.
No, that's great. That's great. That's very, very interesting. All right, let's turn very quickly to the issue of the day, generative AI. And let me just ask you very broadly, I'd like you to maybe tell us a little bit about how you're using generative AI in your research, because I'm sure it's affecting it. But really, I'm most interested in, are you in the doomsday camp, or are you in the salvation, humanity's salvation camp?
Well, I would like to say in the middle again, and there is a good reason to be really worried. And there is good reason to believe that it will also will serve good. It's like the atomic bomb, right? It's like, I think with any scientific innovation, it's going to be used for bad things and good things. it definitely can really have a strong impact on democracy, and basically it may destroy our democratic system because we are not regulating it. But if we will regulate it and use it for good, then it can really transform the way we teach students and how they learn. So it can go both ways. And knowing people way to innovate with tools, it's going to be used in both cases. So I question whether we'll have enough strong regulation system to save us or not. Looking on how Washington is functioning, we should be very worried. But
yeah, I agree as well. I'm really fascinated by your work on exploring how the mind or the neurons in the mind align in this entrainment when entities, even multiple entities, are aligned in this way. And I want to speak here a little bit about love and the concept of love, because we always think of love as an alignment, a flow that is two entities in sync, and sort of that deep union, that deep unification. How can our listeners themselves sort of understand your work and how to apply it in their own life, not only with an intimate relationship, but with their friends, their family, and how can, or what, in what way can the work you do and the tools that you have help a listener with this entrainment of language in their own home and in their community?
So we don't use the word alignment, we use the word coupling. And alignment is folded within coupling. So, when you coupled, is your dynamic influencing another person's dynamic, and their dynamics influence you. So basically, alignment wants the dynamic to be mirroring, and coupling allow it to be coupled but not the same. And in a way, you can be aligned and coupled on multiple levels. If you smile and someone else smiling to you, it's non-verbal, but you're coupled on the smile, right? It's a beautiful thing. And then you can be coupled with other person's body, and it's a beautiful thing. And then you can be coupled with someone, smile, body, and mind, and that's divine, right? That's the way it's all connected, and it's all the same tricks on different levels.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Beautiful.
All right, well, Uri, before we let you go, we just wanted to get one last comment on a concept that we always ask all our guests, and it's on the ego. And I wonder if you have any comment on how you think the ego works from a scientific perspective, based upon the research you've done over these years, and on how the brain works. Can you make any comment for us at all on this notion, this idea we have about what the ego is, and maybe where it's located in the brain, and what your research might or might not have to say about the concept?
I can, but I'm not sure that you're going to like my answer. But okay. So, we always have metaphors, how the brain is working. And usually our metaphors are going with the latest technology. So in Freud time, actually it started with Descartes even, before Freud, but also you can see it in Freud thinking. They are thinking about hydraulic system as a metaphor for the mind. If you're going to suppress your thought over here, it's going to erupt in another place. And it's a beautiful metaphor. And this metaphor can really help people. The same with the ego and alter ego. There's a metaphor over there about how the brain have different parts that talking with themselves, and one is hiding, and you suppress your thought to the subconscious, and then it's erupt over here, and this is like one-on-one storytelling. And these metaphors are really helping people. And like any storytelling, they are powerful and beautiful. But if you ask me, is the brain hydraulic system? I will say no. It's storytelling, it's metaphor. Now, in the early 20th century, they invented the computer. Suddenly, the brain moved from an hydraulic system to a computer system, Turing machine, that have symbolic processing, symbols, representations, and computations. And we become computers as a metaphor. Are we computers? No, we aren't. We're not computers. We are not hydraulic machines. Now there is a new revolution, and everything talking about deep learning. So now the brain is a neural network. Are we neural networks? Probably it's also a metaphor that will capture something and will miss something. And this is how we move. We move from this like metaphors to metaphor to metaphor. So my answer is, if the ego metaphor helps you live well, alter it like it's the truth. But that's not how the brain is working.
And you're not going to tell us the area of the brain that's responsible for the ego.
The area that tells stories. We talked about it all the time. This is exactly the moment. This is the area that tells you stories. But that's not how your brain is working.
Nice.
Good. Well, Uri, thank you very, very much for your time today. We really appreciated it. And thanks for being a guest on Exploring Reality, maybe.
My pleasure.
Wonderful, Uri. Thank you. Thank you so much.
This episode was brought to life by Ka Pathogenics, offering 100% plant-based supplements featuring Kana, a South African plant that's clinically proven to reduce stress, lift mood, and improve focus, helping you feel more alive, energized, and connected, while also supporting your immune and nervous systems. Kana is safe, legal, non-addictive, and life-changing. Try Kakana Chews or Tincture to feel calm and alive from head to heart. Go to ohmyka.com and get 10% off with code REALITYMAYBE at checkout. That's ohmyka.com.
Exploring Reality Maybe is written, produced, fact-checked, and edited by Jody R. Weiss and David Schwartz. Research support is provided by Semicolon Connects. Music produced by Nextbox. Visit our website at exploringrealitymaybe.org to find show notes, transcripts, bios, and to learn more. If you like the show, please visit our website to donate.